I hope you're interested in nose hair trimmers because that's all I'm talking about today. Guys, if you're somewhere between the age of 25 and 45, nose hair just shows up at some point unannounced. No one really wants it there, but it's something you're gonna have to deal with at some point in your life. Now, the good news is it's not that big of a deal. Usually just a couple trims a month will keep it in check. Don't worry too much about that. Before I get into the trimmers, I did want to say that there is a right and a wrong way to deal with nose hair. There are ways to try and get rid of it that don't involve a specific nose hair trimmer. That might be something like trying to pluck it out with tweezers or even using wax to pull it out, but I would not recommend pulling out or completely removing the nose hairs, as they are there to serve a purpose. Those things are filtering the air as it goes into your lungs and doing a pretty important job. It's important to keep them trimmed back, but you don't want to remove them completely. I also want to mention that I'm not a huge fan of single purpose tools, but in this case, there is no other trimmer that will get the job done other than a specific nose hair trimmer. You're not going to be jamming a pair of scissors up there. Please don't do that. You're not going to be trying to put the corner of your trimmer blade up there to make this work out. Please, it's just not worth it. If the nose hairs start showing up, it's just time to buy a trimmer. Good news is there's plenty of options. I looked at 12 of the most popular trimmers on the market to kind of take a look and see what the differences are between them, between the different battery styles, the blades, and then kind of how they work. I would like to note that of all the articles that I looked at online, no one actually seemed to be buying and testing these trimmers out, so I thought it was worth just getting my hands on these things and seeing how they cut and how they worked to sort of make that judgment for myself. So let me give you a little overview on the difference between the two cutting head styles. So the rotary style of head is a little easier to use because all you have to do is kind of jam it in your nose and spin it around a little bit. This trimmer head style also has the benefit of being a little bit better for ear hair as well, being that the linear blade isn't necessarily something you want to try and jam into your ear. Now, where the linear blade style is a little bit better than the rotary style is if you have trouble getting hairs that are stuck kind of in funny corners of your nose or stuck along the sides. And if it's having trouble picking those up, in some cases, the linear blade style kind of goes in your nose a little bit more, and you have the ability to kind of scrape around the edge with that style of blade. So for some people, it's gonna work a little bit better depending on where you're having the most problem. If you're a person who does have ear hair, I would say make sure to get a trimmer that has a rotary blade. If not, you have the option to choose either. One other thing to note, that the linear blade style can be used in other places as well. So they're generally really tiny toothed blades, and they can be fabulous for cleaning up certain areas where you have some fuzz or some other hairs you want to get rid of. So like between your eyebrows or even around your eyebrows, any other spot where there's like really fine hairs that you're trying to remove. So out of the 12 trimmers I tested, there's about 4 that I would recommend, and the rest I'd say you could probably pass on. I'm gonna go through that a little bit as I talk a little bit about each trimmer. Let's start with the Toilettree trimmer. This trimmer has been on Amazon for a long time and has a long history of being out there on the market. Overall, the build quality on this is pretty good. It is waterproof. It does have a single AA battery, and it definitely has enough power. So when you fire this thing up, you can definitely hear and feel that this thing is gonna cut like a champion. This is probably one of the only trimmers I recommend that just has the rotary head. No options for snapping on the linear blade, but definitely a nice rotary head on this trimmer. Pretty reasonably priced. The Toilettree trimmer is $18. Let's talk about the Braun. So this is a good one to talk about after the Toilettree, because honestly, the build quality and the feel of this thing just isn't quite as good. The motor runs, I think, at a little bit slower rate. It is a replaceable battery as well, also a AA. For whatever reason, this thing's $27. The Toilettree is $18. Just can't really find any reason to recommend the Braun over the Toilettree. They're very similar in a lot of other regards. Let's move on to the Phillips 1000 series. So this is a trimmer that is a linear blade only. This particular one is fairly small. The on-off is a twist at the bottom. This does also have a rechargeable AA battery, like most of these trimmers do. Wasn't a huge fan of how this one cut. Probably wouldn't be my first choice. This trimmer was $21. I don't totally understand. The other Phillips trimmer was only $13 and it came with both head styles. So either way, neither of these two kind of make my top picks. Let's talk about the Conair. So the Conair is one of, I think, the 2 trimmers in this test that use a AAA battery, delivering maybe a little bit less power. The head style on the Conair is a linear blade. It actually has kind of a double-sided thing where there's a longer blade on one side and then a tiny little short blade on the other. Overall, this thing trims pretty well. It's just the build quality on it is very, very bad. I couldn't ever get this head to fit on right. It always just kind of falls off, and the switch and everything about it just feel like super cheap. Honestly, it didn't cut all that bad. I think it cut fine. I just can't really put up with how bad the build quality on this trimmer is, and for that reason, I wouldn't recommend it, because there's a couple others in this list that are just way better, way nicer, so you don't have to deal with this one. Let's do another slim design. This one is the Wahl, also one of the other trimmers that worked on the AAA battery. Overall, honestly, a lot of it is very, very similar to the Conair trimmer. It's just put together a little bit nicer. So actually this head kind of doesn't fit all that great either. Let's be honest. Anyway, this one did have 2 head styles. So it has this linear blade, and then it also does have the rotary blade that snaps on. It was only $10. So this is definitely the low price winner because it is really compact. It has both head options for 10 bucks. This definitely is not the nicest trimmer you will find, but it's definitely on my list to recommend because of that. When I first saw that there were mechanically operated nose hair trimmers, I had to try these things out. I can say that after having tried out both of these manually operated trimmers, I would not recommend them to anyone. The experience was not good. It wasn't too different than plucking your hair. It was literally that bad. So yes, it did get the job done, but it was not a good experience and I wouldn't want to do it again. All right, so the Meridian, this is one of the most expensive trimmers on our test. It is a rechargeable battery trimmer. The battery itself isn't actually any bigger or more powerful than the AA that's in a lot of these other trimmers, but you can plug it in and charge it with a micro USB. Kudos to them for the slick design. I mean, this thing certainly looks cool, but at $42, this was the most expensive. To be honest, it didn't work or cut any better than any of the lower price trimmers. And with that having a rechargeable battery, it is something where if that battery fails 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, this thing isn't gonna be any good anymore. Versus the replaceable battery, even if it's sitting in the drawer for 5 years, you can always put a new battery in there and it's gonna work again. That said, let me talk about the Manscaped trimmer because this is the only other one with the rechargeable battery. The Manscaped was $34. They have since released a new version. All I can tell essentially is that the outside casing's a little bit different and they've raised the price significantly. I think they saw Meridian charging a lot more for this thing and decided they wanted to play that game too. So for the same reasons I wouldn't recommend the Meridian, I wouldn't recommend this trimmer either, being that that internal battery is just going to be a bit of a liability 5, 6, 7 years down the road. When it craps out, this thing's not going to be useful. I didn't find any benefit with this trimmer. I didn't see it doing anything that, for example, the Toilettree could not do. Again, these rotary style blades are very similar to one another. You're not getting anything special with the blade or the battery or anything. All these trimmers are waterproof as well. So basically no extra benefits with the Manscaped trimmer. So that's why I wouldn't recommend this one either. The Microtouch. This is a bit of an infomercial brand, but this one looked good, so I wanted to try it out. And I have to say that this is definitely one of the best linear blade only trimmers. The build quality is good. The power button is this cool thing on the back. And overall, the size and shape of the head was very good on this one and it worked well. If you're looking for a linear only trimmer this is one of the ones that I would recommend. This thing was only $15, and also a replaceable AA battery, slides in the bottom. So that's on my list of trimmers I'd recommend. So let's go to one of the other ones that has both the rotary and linear style blade heads, and that is the Brio nose and ear hair trimmer. So with this one, like many of the other ones, running on a replaceable AA battery. The trimming head on this, again, very similar to a lot of the other ones. The linear head is an open blade style, so you are going to be able to get close to the skin for those other use cases, whether that's between your eyebrows or other small body hairs that you want to shave off. This style of head is going to work really well. Button here is on the bottom. It has kind of a slick form factor, just being kind of a cylinder. This is our third version of this trimmer. So the first version had a AAA battery that we thought was a little bit underpowered, so we stepped it up. And then the last iteration, we added the linear trimmer head because we found out that turns out that's a pretty important thing to have with a nose hair trimmer. My remaining beef on the Brio is that the cap does not fit on top of the linear head. Maybe that's something we'll solve in later versions. The Brio nose hair trimmer is going to be one that I would recommend, being that it does have both head styles, runs on a AA battery, and is only $20. All right, so after the testing, I boiled it down to 4 trimmers I'd recommend. Again, here's what they are and here's why. Starting with the Wahl. Recommend this one because it did have both trimmer head styles. It's super small and it's only $10. You know, not the greatest build quality, but that's what you get for 10 bucks. Microtouch. This one worked really well as a linear head only trimmer. It worked a little bit better than some of the other linear head only trimmers in this test, so this was my top pick for that style. The Toilettree trimmer, great build quality, super powerful, waterproof, been around for a long time, reasonable price. One of my top picks as the rotary head only trimmer. This one also has that replaceable AA battery. Finally, the Brio ear and nose trimmer. This one also has both head styles, which I think is super important. Runs on that replaceable AA battery. Overall cuts really well. If you have any questions on any of these products or anything that you're not seeing in this test, drop a comment below and I will try to answer your questions. If you want to see more reviews on products like this, please hit subscribe, and thanks for watching.